Good afternoon, everybody. 5th of October, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Snuck over to the garage a little bit here to get body filler on here. So I've let this epoxy primer, finishing my last visit on Monday. The epoxy primer's been sitting for several days, obviously. I got about a 7-day window from application to get something on it, either the next coat of paint or whatever. So epoxy's my next step, and I want to give the epoxy primer, or excuse me, I want to give the body filler a little time to set up. I will be back for a normal weekend visit either tomorrow or Sunday. I'm not sure which yet, but I want to get the filler on here, get it covered up, and so when I come back in this weekend, I'm going to be ready to sand that down. So that's what we're going to go through here in the next couple hours. All right, so here's the door. Like I said, the light, you need a really good light to kind of see. So I can see with my eye. And I'm going to try to run the camera across this. Hopefully you can see all of the craters of the moon and dings on here. So this is actually, looks a little bit worse now, and this with the nice shiny epoxy on it than I thought it would. But I guess I couldn't have really expected much better. So essentially the entire door is going to need to be covered in filler, I think, instead of little spots places like I was hoping to get away with. But that's okay. But I've got this crease right here, so what I'm going to do is do like if you're marking off for paint, I'm going to run a piece of tape across here to get a nice hard edge, and then apply the body filler and then rip that tape off after it cures up just a little bit, but that it's not dry so that I don't crack it, and that'll give me a nice hard edge there, and I'll have to work the top. The bottom I'll have to work at a different time. And then the boot lid is actually not as bad. Doesn't look as bad. You're not going to really be able to see, I don't think, in the light, but it doesn't look as bad as the door does. But I still have this is that spot where I got the paint on too heavy here, so I'm going to have to take some of that down. And then the balance, if I get to it, the door and the boot lid are going to come first, but we'll see how it goes. So this is the body filler that I decided to go with. Essentially it was reading a whole bunch of posts and everything on that SPI form, and deciding that this one got, you know, a little bit better reviews overall than the Rage Gold or the Evercourt Gold or all the, I mean, there's all sorts of different stuff. It's frankly rather confusing. But I haven't even opened this can yet, so we'll open it together. I'm sure it's separated, just like any two-part product would. There is a hardener that comes with it, and I did get this from Amazon. It's like just sly of a gallon. I don't know why they tease you and give it in a gallon can and not sell you a whole gallon, but I think it's Canadian, so that's probably why. Excuse me, Canadian, no offense to my Canadian friends. But it will need to be stirred. This doesn't look like it's in too bad a shape. Doesn't look like it's separated too much. Definitely smells like body filler though. I remember that smell from my grandpa's garage. So that's it. Like I said, it comes with a tube of hardener, and this is the blue stuff. If you can kind of see on the edge there, you can see the blue inside. So I'll take a stir stick to it. I'll stir it up and get it going here. There is very limited instructions on the side of the can, as you can see there. I'll zoom in a little bit here and get it arranged. Very highly technical. Stir, clean. Tells you to grit with 80 grit. Apply the hardener, apply, wait 15 to 20 minutes, which I'm going to wait much more than that, and then you can start going to town with sanding it down. Now, I do not intend to pre-sand my panels, because the epoxy is good, like I said, for up to 7 days without any prep or any pre-sanding. That's from the manufacturer. And so yeah, the hardener instructions are very also very simple / not very exact. Depending on how big of a blob you've got, that's how much hardener you use. So that's definitely a, you know, kind of about so much kind of works. So I'll probably be using 4-inch diameter circles and then going from there. So not incredibly scientific. It's not like mix and paint where you need this 1-to-1s marked off and everything. And again, I've got my spreaders right here, various sizes, Bondo spreaders, not very fancy. And So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and stir this stuff up and then get some of it ready to apply. So I have not applied body filler since probably 1987, 88 on my little MG midget. So I have zero experience in this. I think I'll be able to mix it okay, but outside of that, there's no promises. So I'm going to get a bunch of this stuff out of here, get it on the mixing board here, start mixing it up. I sprayed everything down with wax and grease remover, the board, my applicator, the door. That's what I'm going for first. I've got the door taped off. You'll see that when I get over there. Now I'm going to mix the body filler up. And relatively small batch. You do kind of have to move a little bit with this stuff, I think. Probably only a couple minutes before it starts to set up. So I got to make sure that I kind of go here. Alright, so that's clean. Now I'm going to put a bead of the hardener across it and then start mixing it in. Again, I'm going off a bunch of YouTube videos I've watched. Eastwood's actually got some pretty good ones. But the goal here is to try to minimize the incorporation of air and then to mix it to get it to one uniform color. So it's an off-white and a blue, so who knows what it's going to look like. So that's essentially what that picture looked like. Who knows? All right, and start mixing it. All right. Bring over the door. Feels like it's already starting to cure up on me. Yep. Oh, that was quick. Wow. See that? That is what you'd call a fail. Alright, well, that didn't work real well. Alright, got another quick batch made up. Let's see how it goes this time. Too much hardener, I think, that first time around, definitely. There's going to be so much dust from this. I've got so much extra filler on here, it's crazy. But it's on there. You can see where it's really bad. So right there is where the seam was, where I split the applications, and then right there it started to cure on me. So that's horrible. But you know, guess it's okay. So I'm going to go and try to get the heavy stuff off now that like down in here, just to get the extra stuff off so I don't have to sand it off, and then I'll set this aside. So this is the broken in half big hunk that I just chucked from that first batch. You can see how thick that is, but it's hot. Not so hot that I can't touch it, but it's definitely putting out some major heat, like hand warmer heat, at least. Pretty cool. All right, boot lid up next. Same process. things I would do different right off the cuff. One, get a real mixing board or one of those paper tear-off mixing boards. I don't like that thing that I got at all. Two, just to practice, I guess, and just get better. I'll show you here in a second. I can see from here that the coloration of my first application and the second is much deeper blue for the first one, so I definitely put too much hardener in that. But let me get cleaned up here a little bit. I'll put the door back up here and show you what I mean. All right, so I am going to take some sandpaper in this real quick, just to kind of see what it does more than anything. Oh, I said I was going to show you the difference in the color here. I don't know if or how well you can see it, but right about here or so was the break between the original coat that I did and then everything else. And you can see how this is much more like a baby blue almost, as opposed to more of a white color. So I think I put entirely too much hardener in there. You can see that I got a nice sharp line, however, down where I put that tape in, but we'll see how well it backfills. So I got 40 grit sandpaper. The directions for the Evercoat stuff says to go to 80 grit. A lot of the stuff that I read on the SPI forum is saying 80 grit, or excuse me, 40 grit to start, to establish your curve and then go from there. So that's what I'm going to go with. Just got my normal pad with a little bit of 40 grit on it, and I'm just going to kind of see what happens here. All right, so that's as much as I'm going to do today. Like I said, I just wanted to mainly get the filler on there. I obviously have some practice to do and some lessons to pick up on here to get this stuff in properly. So I can feel several of the dents not filled, which is okay, I think. Like there's a pretty good low spot right here. This didn't really get filled here on this seam. So the big deep ones that I kind of knew about are still in here. So I'm going to have to hit them specifically. But I think this is probably going to take out a lot of the little dings and like the little moon craters and everything that you see on it. Not as shiny now, obviously, so it's kind of harder to see. But I think once I start to work this down a little bit, it'll become better. So that's the 40 grit hit. Next up will be 80, and then eventually 150, I think, and then 220. I showed you that little video how I'm going to progress along. So that's the path ahead. So I'll get back in here hopefully either tomorrow or Sunday, like I said, bright and early, and I'll get back at it. Saturday morning, 6th of October, about 8:30. I'm going to concentrate on the door until I'm happy with where it sits. I'm not going to, even though I threw a filler on the bonnet, or excuse me, on the boot lid, I'm just going to leave that sitting over there. Do one panel here. I'm not going to get to paint or anything like that. I'm not going to go that far. But I'm going to get this as cleaned up and straight as I think I can do it, and try to get some experience on the door here before I move on to the boot lid. Thankfully, one thing about the filler is you can eventually sand it all down and get rid of it all and kind of start all over again. I guess you can do that with paint also, but didn't go quite as well as I would have hoped it did yesterday. So it's, you know, like with anything else that I've been doing in this phase, it's gonna come with the experience as I figure out what I'm doing. But so I'm going to continue on this, try to get some feathered in, and then fill the low spots and see what I've got for highs, and if I need to get back to hammer work, we'll see how it goes. All right, so this is all 40 grit here, and you can see the high spots are really starting to come out, and the low spots will be where the filler kind of sits. So like this circle here, that would be a low spot, but it's starting to flatten out, which is kind of the whole point. So it's very rough. There's a big low spot right here where I can't even get in the hole. If you can see the little like extra filler there, those little spikes, I can't really get in there. I am block sanding all this. I don't want to do it by hand because you'll just make more waves when you do it by hand. You need a nice flat block. So I'm using the 40 grit. I'm using my short block. I don't know, this is 5 or 6 inches. And then I'm going to use this bigger guy here for, I got 80 grit on there. That's what I'm getting ready to move up to. So there's a couple more spots on here that I want to hit, but it's maybe starting to come out a little bit better than I had feared at first. So a couple big low spots still to hit with body filler, but it's definitely starting to smooth out. So we'll see how it keeps going. All right, I blocked down to about 150 or so, and I'm ready to put some more epoxy, or excuse me, some more filler on there. Some of the bad spots, I got a really good low spot right here, which I knew about. And then I got all sorts of stuff going on in here. This feels pretty bad. You can see all of the metal here surrounding this low spot in here. And I tried to get it out. I took some hammer work to it, but I'm not so sure that I fixed it. But I'm going to run body filler over it anyway and see if I can get it to flatten out. If not, I'm going to have to come back and visit this. So here, a little bit right here, but not too bad. I got this, it doesn't look real great, but I got it pretty flat right here. And then this piece of tape here is just to protect whatever I do over here so I don't get it down on the flat portion. And then you can still see where the sandpaper is not touching the filler here, so I'll fill this and I'll fill these 2 spots. Again, I knew about these going in, that I wasn't going to be able to get those out. And then I'll go back to blocking. So it's feeling pretty good up here actually. I'm happy with the way that feels. Still have some sanding work to do. You can see the sand scratches in it and everything. So it needs a lot more attention at 150 before I get anywhere near putting more epoxy on it. And I still have to do the bottom as well. But yeah, it's coming a little bit better than I thought. This went on much smoother, especially this part right here. And again, it's just so hard to show you with the camera. It just doesn't really pick it up as well as seeing it in person. But you'll have to trust me. But that went on pretty well. So now, again, one thing that I forgot to mention that I had learned yesterday is the stuff dries to sanding pretty quick, like the can said, 15 to 20 minutes, and it's sandable. So right now it's still pretty wet, but you can hear it start to you can see my fingerprints in there. You can hear it start to kind of be sticky, but pretty quickly here that'll start to cure up, and then you can get right to sanding. So there's not half-hour induction times and waits between coats and all that kind of stuff like there is with epoxy, so it's pretty user-friendly for time constraints like that. All right, about 10:30. I haven't taken this down any lower than 40 grit yet, but the top half of the door, I guess you could say, is about done. Got some low spot right here, right around this is where the door lock goes, so I'll hit that real quick. But now I got the tape line in there pretty straight. I'm going to hit the bottom with some filler and pretty much go through the same process. There's a bunch of lows down here. This spot in here is pretty bad, at least as bad as this guy was up here, so this will take a lot of filler. And then a couple divots here where I had to fill those holes where there was rust spots and stuff in it. I think that's what those were. So get some filler on here, let it dry up, and then continue on. Got that layered on. I'll let that sit here for a little bit and dry up. I'm going to leave the tape while I sand this time because I want to keep my edge, and hopefully keeping the tape there will not have me sand and smooth over the edge because I'm going up on it. So we'll see if that works or not. Pretty good coverage, a little easier. I scuffed it up, if you notice this time, the paint, to hopefully give me a little bit more adhesion. But we'll let that sit and see what happens next. Alright, so if you can see, that's all 40 grit. What I'm trying to do here is essentially get down to metal, or to at least epoxy on a lot of that, and start to feather it in. I just don't want a glob or a thin layer of filler on there. I just don't see a reason to have that. But you can see where it's starting to, when I'm blocking this out, start to fill in the low spots, especially this spot over here. That feels actually pretty good. I might not need to put more Bondo in that, but I might. I gotta mix some up for that door lock spot anyway. So I'm just going to continue going down through the grades now, get this tape off of here, and what I got 80 next and then 150 after that, and then see how it looks. Still got some spots here to work on. If you can see, this is kind of a dark spot there, dark spot there. What I think that is, it's a little low and the sandpaper is just not picking it up. So I'll get those filled in a little bit. One there. Fill that area in. The problem though, unfortunately, is this high spot here, this ridge, is pretty bad. And I could really feel that. And I think what's happening is it's just not. I'd have to put a lot of filler in there to flatten it up. So I think I'm going to take a step back a little bit and hit this with the shrinking disc. Hopefully that doesn't mess this adventure up on the door. Everything else is feeling pretty good. There's some slight bobbles and waves in it, but I'm not going to get all bent out of shape about really going hugely flat. I'm not, I can spend hours probably, but I'm just not going to do that. So anyway, I'll try to take the shrinking disc to this to see if this helps at all. I will hit it with filler again regardless, and then get those little spots filled in again with filler and continue on. Got that high spot out. It's a little bit of a low spot now, of course, because that's the way it works out for me. So I'm going to now hit everything, and there's a couple other low spots that I pointed out in filler. Let that dry up and keep at it. Filler is on. I think in the last video I had mentioned that I was going to probably do this about 3 times and then go back to some hammer and dolly work. So this will probably be about the last time that I really pick out any spots. Probably a little heavier than it probably should have been or needed to be. But then again, maybe that's my problem in the first place. Definitely not going greater than, I think the can says no greater than 1/8 of an inch thick. Definitely not going any greater than that. These are pretty subtle dents. I'm not fixing like the spots that I had found on the car before. So grab a bite to eat, let this stuff cure up, and then we'll get back to sanding. Sanding this area is still on the 40 grit. If you can see it very subtly, you got that oblong piece there. It looks a little greenish still. That's where the sandpaper hasn't touched yet. That was where I used the shrink disc, so it obviously created a low. However, I think by feeling it, I think I'm going to be able to get it out of there with sanding. I don't know. I can kind of feel it still. I don't know if I'm going to have enough Bondo here or filler here to take the rest of the area down, but we'll see. So still working on that. About 3:15 or so, knocking off for the day. As far as I'm concerned, this door is practically done. with the exception of any last minute, maybe putty or something like that, which I don't actually have polyester putty. I got to order some of that. I used probably entirely too much body filler, much more than I probably could have if my experience level was a little bit higher. And obviously you can see here, this was a big spot here of it, a big spot here of it, and a big spot here of it. That's where most of the damage was on the door. There's still a couple spots that probably I could chase around, but just not going to do that. I will reassess when I hit it with epoxy. If it looks really bad with epoxy, since it's got a little bit of a shine to it, then I may change my mind. But otherwise, that's about 6 or 7 hours of work there. And it doesn't look a whole lot different than it did before I started, but it definitely feels a lot better. But it's been sanded down with 220 and then hit with the red scuff pad. So that's the next step, is essentially getting it cleaned up and ready so that it can be epoxy primered. Didn't get to the boot lid at all. That'll be on the next visit. And the door here will go into the hopper for painting. And that was about it for the day. So please visit the website, www.roundtailrestoration.com. In the exception of this video, it should be caught up. So appreciate you guys running over there and reading about this stuff, as well as watching these videos. Bumping up against 1,000, pretty close, 975 or so the last time I checked. So thanks everybody for watching and liking, of course, and your comments are very much appreciated. And the subscriptions are awesome as well. Have a good rest of your hopefully 3-day weekend. I know I will. And I'll see you guys sometimes next week. Cheers.